In this GE, the Workers' Party released its own statement on 26 April, the day after ELD and MHA had issued their statement. The WP statement stated that no promises, commitments, or agreements were made to Deros in exchange for political support. In the circumstances, given the fundamentals of our multiracial, multi-religious approach and the ideals set out in our pledge, more needed to be said by the WP, and it needed to be said immediately after Deros had made his posts. First, on the timing of the Workers' Party statement. On the 23rd of April, Deros publicized his meeting with the WP. That was on nomination day. He said that the WP were the only ones who took him seriously. He called on all Muslims in Singapore to vote for the WP if they agreed to his demands. He also called on Tampines residents to vote for Mr. Faisal Manap, specifically over Minister Masagos. The next day, on 24th of April, Deros continued to speak publicly about his meeting with the WP. He said that he had met with all of the WP's Malay candidates. He also repeated his call for Tampines voters to vote for Mr. Faisal Manap. Only on 26 April did the WP issue its statement. That was more than 2 days after Deros publicized his meeting with the WP, and after the statement by ELD and MHA. This was during the campaign period when every day made a huge difference. This delay on such an important matter begs many questions. It can confuse the ground. For example, sections of voters might be misled into thinking on those 2 days that the WP was possibly considering Deros's demands. Deros was saying all these things and the WP was silent. MHA and Elections Department had to step in and say this was unacceptable. And after that, the WP issued its statement. Second, the WP's statement was ambiguous. It said that no commitments, promises had been given and no agreements were reached, and that the WP was committed to the principle that religion and politics should be kept separate. The statement did not categorically reject Deros's call on Muslims in Singapore to vote along racial, religious lines, nor did it reject Deros's support for its anchor in Tampines, Mr. Faisal Manap. If we accept that identity politics has no place in Singapore, then a clearer and more immediate response was called for. For example, something along these lines would have been much clearer, that Deros set out various demands based on his religious beliefs. He said that he would ask Muslims to vote for candidates who accepted his demands. He asks Muslims to vote for the WP candidates if the WP agreed to his demands. He also said that he endorses Mr. Faisal Manap in Tampines because Mr. Faisal is a more vocal champion of Malay Muslim issues. The WP rejects his attempts to influence the Malay Muslim community based on religion and race, just as we reject his endorsement of Mr. Faisal Manap based also on religion and race. That is completely unacceptable. We rejected it when he told us, and we reject it now. This is what needed to be said. It is one way of putting it. Any other form of words conveying the same points could also have been used, but it should have been squarely stated. Immediately after Deros issued his statement on 23 April, without letting the matter drag. Mr. Singh did follow up on 26 and 27 April at media interviews to say that Deros's endorsement doesn't mean that the WP will carry forward his policies. But we hope that in future, if such incidents occur, there will be more immediate, forthright, and unequivocal response given by political parties. Establishing this common understanding on how such issues must be dealt with in future is one of the key reasons for this ministerial statement. Let me now turn to the contest in Tampines GRC in the last GE. As I said earlier, the WP fielded Mr. Faisal Manap in Tampines to contest against the PAP team led by Minister Masagos. That the Malay-Muslim vote in particular was being targeted was obvious, not just to Singaporeans, but pertinently also obvious to Malaysian observers. Malaysian politicians from PAS jumped in. They saw an opening and urged Singaporeans to vote along racial and religious lines. PAS National Treasurer Iskandar Abdul Samad expressed support for the WP's Mr. Faisal Manap. PAS Selangor Youth Chief Muhammad Sukri Omar reposted a social media post stating that PAP's Malay-Muslim MPs cannot be trusted. More than 60 years ago, Malaysian politicians said the same things about PAP Malay-Muslim leaders. PAS is an Islamist party. Its goal is to Islamize society in Malaysia. It has persistently pushed for the adoption of Sharia law and penalties. Does anyone, whether in here or outside, seriously believe that PAS is supporting the WP's Malay-Muslim candidates in Singapore because PAS cares for Singaporeans? Does anyone believe that PAS has Singaporeans' best interests at heart? Does anyone believe that PAS subscribes to Singapore's multiracial, multireligious model? Statements by PAS leaders have clearly shown otherwise. In 2024, for example, PAS president said that Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's strategy of fielding candidates from diverse ethnic backgrounds had led to Malay political influence diminishing in Singapore. This history is seared into some of us. And it is also seared into some Malaysians, but for very different reasons. So we knew the government had to call it out when PAS leaders openly supported a political party in Singapore on racial and religious grounds and in the middle of a general election, and when the political party in question hadn't responded. Thus, the MHA Elections Department statement I referred to earlier was issued. It spoke about foreigners attempting to influence elections. Access to the post by PAS politicians was disabled. Prime Minister also spoke about this in his press conference on 26 April. Foreigners targeting Singaporeans, asking them to vote on racial, religious lines, that crosses a red line. Prime Minister called on all political parties to, 1, make their stand clear on foreign influence, and 2, clearly and categorically reject foreign endorsements of their candidates. The past politicians were championing one set of Malay-Muslim candidates over another set of Malay-Muslim candidates. Unfortunately, the truth is that such attempts will have some impact. And therefore, it is incumbent on all political parties to decisively reject any attempts by foreigners to influence our election, especially on the grounds of race and religion. The WP issued a statement on 26 April. I had also referred to this earlier in the context of Deros. There are two concerns with the WP statement. First, on the timing, and second, on the substance. On timing, foreign influence is a serious matter. It is even more serious in the middle of a campaign. So, given the gravity of the matter, it would have been better if the WP had issued its statement immediately without waiting until after MHA ELD had issued their statement. On the substance, the WP statement did not clearly reject foreign influence or the foreign endorsement of its candidates. What it said was that the WP had no control over what others said. After the WP statement was issued, Mr. Singh made further statements on 26 April. At a doorstop interview, he said that he stood behind the message in MHA ELD statement. That made the WP's position clearer. Then finally, at a rally speech later that evening, which took place after the Prime Minister's press conference, Mr. Singh went further and gave the WP's clearest statement on the matter. He said that he categorically rejected the involvement of any foreign element whatsoever in Singapore's domestic politics. And two, that the WP does not need the support of any foreign element. It would have been better if the WP had said this right from the start, responding directly and promptly to what the past leaders had said. The WP did so after the Prime Minister had called on all parties to make their position on foreign influence clear and clearly and categorically reject foreign endorsements of their candidates. We hope that in future, political parties will immediately reject any such attempt to interfere in our political process. If this is not done immediately, clearly, and unequivocally, it will give rise to questions, confusion. We therefore hope that in future political parties will immediately reject, and especially when such interference is made on the basis of race and religion. I will now move on to another incident during the GE. Mr. Damanhuri Abas was an SDP candidate. He had made attempts to get support along racial lines. At an SDP event, Mr. Damanhuri accused the PAP Malay MPs of failing to represent the Malay community and ignoring their issues. He claimed that more opposition Malay MPs were needed to raise Malay issues in Parliament. In an interview posted on social media, Mr. Damanhuri stated that Malay community issues had not been resolved for 60 years under the PAP government. He called for the Malay voters to vote against the PAP, framing it as an issue of upholding Malay dignity. Dignity is an euphemism. What Mr. Damanhuri means is more Malay rights. More Malay rights, more advocating for Malay issues, more Malay separateness. In a separate podcast, he said meritocracy is selectively applied. He rehashed these arguments again in rally speeches, this time in Malay. Mr. Damanhuri's rhetoric is deceptive. What he is effectively doing is trading off the long-term welfare of the Malay community and our country for his immediate political gain. This is a slippery and dangerous path that will invite strong reaction from other races in future elections. So far, the situation has been broadly stable because the government has anchored our country on our ideal of multiracialism. The governing party itself has eschewed identity politics, fought against attempts to rile up the different ethnic communities. It has set out the fundamental ideals on how our society should be structured, and it has managed to convince most Singaporeans to accept those ideals. Meanwhile, from time to time, various parties, candidates have tried to stir up the Chinese and Malay communities. Because of the PAP government's political dominance, these efforts have not been successful. The PAP has been the dominant political force. So it has been able to bear the political cost of fighting against such sentiments. Making this statement here today, it would actually have been easier to leave all of this unsaid. But this statement has to be made in the country's interest. The situation is a dynamic one. It is not permanent. If future generations of political leaders on all sides see such identity politics as gaining traction, then they will be pressured and tempted to themselves engage in it too. You know what will happen then? It is a one-way street to ruin. So people like Mr. Damanhuri should be more honest with their constituents. Their brand of politics will only work as long as the dominant political force, whether it is the PAP or another party in Singapore, rejects identity politics. But if people like Mr. Damanhuri succeed, then the serious risk is that more and more politicians on all sides will go for identity politics. And then Singapore will suffer. We will experience the same conflicts and divisions we see unfolding elsewhere in the world. So the dangers of politicizing race and religion are clear. But that is not to say that race and religion on the one hand and politics on the other hand are incompatible. All religions provide guidance on important aspects of life. So inevitably there will be areas where faith and public issues overlap. The government recognizes this complexity and how our identity is interwoven out of our faith, our ethnicity, our language, and our culture. In a multicultural society, a pragmatic approach of give and take is necessary. People are free to practice their faiths and express their views on politics and political issues, influenced by their private religious convictions. But we need to be mindful. This must be done in a manner that is respectful to other religions. The public political debate must be conducted and decided on a secular basis, and there must be give and take on all sides. All political parties need to be absolutely clear. Religion must not be misused for political purposes. It must never be brought into election campaigns. Without this shared restraint, destructive competition for power and influence between the different groups can only follow. The same logic applies to race.